Good evening. I'm Jack Tomczak and I'm Minnesota Knights. On tonight's show, I'll give you the big political news of this very busy week. Our political pundit panel will follow up on the tax conformity issue with Senate Tax Committee Chair Roger Chamberlain and a delightful sit-down interview with endorsed Republican gubernatorial candidate Jeff Johnson. But first, a look at sports. There will be no sports. There will be news and jokes. Two big things happened this week. Last weekend, the major political parties held their statewide conventions, and Tuesday was the last day candidates could file for office. There were not many surprises at the Republican convention as the party of Roosevelt endorsed Hennepin County Commissioner Jeff Johnson for governor. State Representative Jim Newberger was endorsed to run for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by Amy Klobuchar. State Senator Karen Housley was endorsed to run for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by interim Senator Tina Smith. Former State Representative Pam Myra is running for auditor. Former State Rep Doug Wardlow is running for Attorney General. And former State Senator John Howe was endorsed to run for Secretary of State. Not endorsed was former Governor Tim Pawlenty, who is going to run in the primary anyway. The oddball moment of the GOP convention belongs to U.S. Senate candidate Robert Barnhizer, who in an attempt to prove his Republican bona fides had DFL Talk radio host Jamar Nelson give his introduction speech. The real excitement happened at the DFL convention in Rochester, where the party of Roosevelt endorsed State Representative Erin Murphy for governor and State Representative Erin May Quaid as her running mate, making history as the first potential gubernatorial tandem named Erin. Not endorsed was Congressman Tim Walz, who was going to run in the primary anyway. His running mate is State Representative Peggy Flanagan. Also not endorsed was Attorney General Lori Swanson. The DFL instead endorsed somebody named Matt Pelican. Rather than endorsing the three-term incumbent with 100% name ID across the state, the DFL chose to endorse somebody named Matt Pelican. He's a 36-year-old lawyer, I guess. When asked by the Star Tribune about the candidacy and his campaign, Pelican's co-workers replied, "Matt? Really? Huh." Back to Lori Swanson. For months, she had flirted with the idea of running for governor, but ultimately took the much more prudent route of running for her current position as Attorney General. Until Monday. Rather than run in a primary against Pelican for Attorney General, she announced that she would indeed be running for governor and that her running mate would be none other than outgoing 8th District Congressman Rick Nolan. So, in the DFL primary for governor, we'll have the endorsed Erins, Tim Walz and running mate Peggy Flanagan, and Lori Swanson with Rick Nolan. So this means that this Pelican fella gets to be the DFL Attorney General candidate in the general election, right? Wrong. With 800-pound gorilla Lori Swanson out of the Attorney General's race, the AG race, Congressman Keith Ellison, who has enjoyed the safety and security that comes with being a DFLer representing the 5th Congressional District since 2007, decided to seek the safety and security of being a DFLer who occupies the Minnesota Attorney General office. Unless Mike Hatch wants it. That former Minnesota Attorney General and shadow lurker briefly filed to run for AG, but then withdrew. One of his former protege, State Representative Deb Hillstrom, is running for the spot. What about former State Rep Ryan Winkler, who left his seat in the State House to move to Belgium, but who had returned to run for Attorney General, but then decided he wouldn't because Lori Swanson had decided she wasn't going to run for governor? Well, he's going to stick to running for his old seat in the House, which is being vacated by Tim Walz's running mate, Peggy Flanagan. This was supposed to be a banner year for Minnesota politics because of the 2 U.S. Senate races and an open governor's race. So all of this other stuff is bonus. When we come back, we'll talk about the governor's race with DFLer Jamar Nelson and Republican NASCAR Kelly Gunderson. Welcome back to Minnesota Knights. I'm Jack Tomczak. Let's talk politics with our pundit panel. Joining us is DFL radio host Jamar Nelson.
Thanks for having me.
And conservative pundit NASCAR Kelly Gunderson.
Hi, Jack.
Thanks for coming in, guys. All right, Jamar, we just talked about how you endorsed Robert Barnhizer at the Republican convention.
I did.
Robert Barnhizer, who is a super big fan of President Trump. Are you a super big fan of President Trump?
I am not.
Are any of the candidates who are running for any of the offices of your party super big fans of President Trump?
They're probably not.
So, why would you? Never mind. All right. The DFL party, from the looks of it, is in disarray. We've got Aaron Murphy and Aaron May Quaid are the endorsed team for governor. Plus, you have Attorney General Lori Swanson and outgoing Congressman Rick Nolan running for governor, and Tim Walz, who is most people's favorite from what I've heard, and Peggy Flanagan running. That's a lot of powerful people, a lot of good tickets, a lot of surprises. Is your party in disarray, or is this just a handful of winners?
It's just a handful of winners. No, it's not in disarray. Listen, you want a rigorous primary process going on so that makes the candidates better. And the general, so they can come out ready to face any Republican challenge. I think the Republicans have a little more to worry about, too. I mean, you've got Johnson and Pawlenty fighting, which seems to me to be a part of the problem the Republicans have is, it's not come as you are, it's do as I say. And so the fact that Pawlenty has the momentum on his side and money, I think Democrats are setting themselves up for a really good sneaky win. Republicans will go.
A week ago, Lori Swanson was going to run for Attorney General again, and then suddenly she's not. Rick Nolan was going to be taking vacation in the Bahamas, and now he's running for Lieutenant Governor. And you're telling me that the problem's on the Republican
It's
side.
strategic. I mean, listen about it. She was being strategic about that. The fact that, look, she knows that most Democrats don't do well in rural Minnesota. So at least one of the candidates some of the tickets have to take on rural Minnesota. So she's figured, look, strategically she'll do well in Minneapolis, which is a problem for Republicans. Republicans won't do well in Minneapolis or St. Paul. They need to peel off some of those sectors of voters. They won't. Most voters are going to punish Donald Trump and his party.
In a room full of Democrats, she was beaten by a guy whose last name is Pelican.
Yeah.
And nobody heard of.
No. And now Pelican is a little ticked because Keith is now running. So.
And you're good friends with Keith Ellison.
I am. I think that's going to be. Listen, I think Keith is would be the better AG. I think that he's fighting more. He's done more. His record is better. Pelican is a new face, and there's nothing wrong with that. I know, exactly. Exactly. But listen, again, Pelican has to prove himself in the primary, and if he proves himself worthy and gets enough votes, let's go with it.
I'm sorry, I can't take you seriously when you're saying Pelican so much. NASCAR Kelly Gunderson on the Republican side. Jeff Johnson, the endorsed candidate, former Governor Tim Pawlenty, of course, running in the primary. That was, we figured, the plan all along. He's got a ton of money.
Yep.
How do you see the hot mess of the DFL from the Republican perspective?
The Democrats are going to have to battle each other for a couple of months now, and it's going to get intense and it's going to get pretty heated when you've got as many candidates on the Democrat side that you do running to try to get those primary voters. That being said, who knows how the endorsement coming out of the DFL convention works, because it technically, for the last few go-arounds, with Governor Dayton, hasn't really met much at the primary poll. So I expect that race to get dirty and heated, and I think that's actually a good thing for Republicans.
Now, on the Republican side, by now people kind of know, at least from the activist community, if they're a Johnson supporter or a Pawlenty supporter. Back to your DFL, Jamar. Did the grassroots, the activists, were there rumors that Lori Swanson was going to lose the endorsement or drop out of the endorsement balloting after the first one and then pick a twice retiring congressman to run for governor? I mean, did people see this coming, or are grassroots camps now all confused because they've got another person they could be supporting?
No, I don't think anyone's seen it coming. I don't think she's seen it coming, which is why she dropped out.
That's the kind of person we want as governor.
Well, no, look,
shooting from the hip.
No, you want a person that's honest, which I don't know if we have that in the Republican Party. But you want a person that's more honest and real. She realized that she couldn't win. Why embarrass myself? Let me drop out now, save myself some bit of face, and go out and try to win a more accomplishable race, which would be governor. Again, it's strategic. Democrats are going to come out fine. I think what I like is, instead of falling in love after you fall in line, Democrats are saying, listen, we're not going to do the status quo. We're not going to pick whose turn it is. You have to earn it. And I think that's what you have to do. Pelican style.
All right. NASCAR Kelly, who is your favorite on the Republican side to come out of the primary?
I don't think there's exactly a favorite. I think you kind of see what happens. Jeff Johnson has a good number coming out of the endorsement. He's got the base of the party. He's very familiar among Republicans. He's run, this is his third statewide race.
He can't win.
And I think he's going.
Zip it.
I think he's
You
going.
get your turn. Do you have a preference between the two?
I do not have a preference. I'm excited to see how this primary race turns out. I think there are good things on both sides. I think there are things to watch for on both sides. I think Governor Pawlenty probably maybe didn't do himself a big favor by at least not attending the convention and getting to know some of the people. There was a lot of new faces at the Republican convention.
If you don't have a preference, do you have a putting your heart aside? If you're a betting lady, who do you think will win the Republican primary?
Well,
you're right, it's too early to tell.
It's too early to tell. I think the Republican Party with, there's Governor Pawlenty's got a lot of money in the bank, but in the last go-around, 2016, money didn't necessarily win you elections,
Right.
Jason Lewis being one of them. Just because you have money now doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to do well in an election.
But as we all know, it's better to have money
It
than
is
not.
far easier to spread your message when you have the money to do that around the state. But
It's also easier to buy a wave runner.
it's also when you've been traveling the state for a year, as in Jeff Johnson has been, you pick up a lot of support that way. And I think that's outstate. That's where things are kind of heading as well. So I think it's going to be a pretty interesting race to watch, and we'll just see what happens on August 14th.
All right, Jamar, in the DFL gubernatorial primary, do you have a favorite?
I don't. I'm gonna. I'm just gonna wait and see, and hopefully it's a good candidate. And you heard that.
I did.
Candidates. No, I'm excited. I really am excited. This is not me blowing smoke. I love what's going on. I don't think it's disarray. I think it's really good politics. I think because for so long the new millennials and the different communities, different sectors of communities, have just voted for whomever our party put out. Now they feel a part of the process. It's us making the choice. And so I think that that's what you want. Republicans, again, the fact that Jeff Johnson is running for, a second time at this gubernatorial thing.
Can't you say a nice thing about your party without saying a mean thing
Well,
about the other party?
what I'm saying nice is that I don't think that they can peel away votes. He's a great guy, but he's the only candidate that I see in the Republican Party that's working the inner cities.
What my grandmother said is, if you don't have anything nice to say about somebody, don't say anything at all.
You know what they said about when. Okay.
I admire your courage and your bravery for not having a favorite or a pick. All right. Thank you so much, NASCAR Kelly
you.
Gunderson, DFL Talk Radio host Jamar Nelson.
Thanks for having me.
When we come back, we'll talk about the super interesting topic of federal tax conformity with Senate Tax Committee Chair Roger Chamberlain. Welcome back to Minnesota Nights. I'm Jack Tomzak. Joining us now to talk about tax conformity is Senate Tax Committee Chair Roger Chamberlain. Good evening, Senator.
Good evening. I like to talk about nothing better on this night than tax conformity.
It's a hot topic.
It's a hot topic.
We could talk about the sexy, fun politics, but I'd rather talk tax conformity with you.
I'm not sexy or fun, so let's talk tax.
All right, last time we talked, the state had to conform to the new federal tax law, or people would have a heck of a time doing their taxes next year. Bring us up to speed with the session ending. What did Mark Dayton do with your tax bill, and where do the people of Minnesota sit right now?
The short story is he vetoed the tax. He vetoed the tax bill, and there's nothing to talk about. There's
Thanks
a
for coming in.
Happily, it was a nice ride out here. It was nice weather. He vetoed the tax bill, so he didn't negotiate. Didn't want to negotiate. Look, I'm going to tell you, it's back in January, February. I really don't believe. I've started to believe that he never wanted a tax bill. That the governor and the Democrats never wanted a tax bill. Why didn't they want a tax bill? Because a tax bill signed in Minnesota meant a victory for Trump, meant a victory for Republicans, meant happy, content, prosperous Minnesota. Happy, content, prosperous Minnesotans. That is the enemy of the Democrats. The Democrats love misery, suffering, and pain. There they can win. They can't win with a Trump tax bill bringing prosperity and happiness to the body politic. They never wanted a tax bill. It was never going to be, and he's not going to come back and sign one.
All right, so what are the repercussions of this? Not just difficulty doing your taxes next year, but we're paying more in taxes from now until then. What's
well, you
give
could
us all the difficulties
Minnesotans. You're right. It's going to be more difficult for them to file taxes. They're going to have to file tax return for 2018, a updated federal return, and then since we didn't change our code in Minnesota, they will essentially have to file a federal tax return based on the 17 federal law, and then reconcile that to the Minnesota return. So basically that's how it's going to work. They'll have to fill out 3 returns, many pages of documents to reconcile back. So it's going to be more difficult. As far as costing more money, it may or may not cost some citizens more money, because if we had conformed, didn't do anything, didn't change the law, then they would have had a huge tax increase. As it is now, it'll be based on basically 2017 federal returns. So
Okay.
some may pay more, some may pay less, some may not be harmed.
Going back to what you were saying about how people have to do their taxes, what?
Exactly. It's going to be very difficult. About 25% of the people itemize deductions, Schedule A's. Those people will have the most difficulty. Everybody will have to file a 2018 federal return, and they'll have to reconcile that back to tax law, that old tax law that really it doesn't exist federally anymore.
Okay. Is this something that will TurboTax be able to handle this for people, or will people actually have to hire an accountant to do their own taxes?
Well, both.
TurboTax and an accountant?
So it creates a lot of procedural problems for the Department of Revenue in the state of Minnesota.
Okay.
Also for a lot of the private sector software manufacturers, they will have to somehow figure out how to do this. I don't know how they're going to do it. There could be a lot of different ways to do it. So going from there, we could, the governor could call a special session. He's claimed that he's absolutely not going to do that. Again, I believe he won't. Not to mention the fact that we only have 30, we're tied in the Minnesota Senate 33-33, so I don't know how that would work.
Okay.
A lot of procedural problems, a lot of political problems, and but a lot of people aren't thinking about this now because it's early summer, they're planning vacations, they're trying to get back into their regular lives like me.
That's how the government gets you.
Yeah, right, and you get on the hook. So come October, November, December, people are going to get nervous, and they're going to see a lot of problems with filing returns, and then they'll get upset and nervous.
Do you see people paying attention, and enough people paying attention in time to affect this year's election?
They might. I think
They're going to vote Mark Dayton out finally?
fine. Yeah,
They'll get him.
Yeah, you'll get him now. So, so I believe that politically, I believe that people out on the campaign trail, thankfully I'm not campaigning this year, I'm not up for election this year, I think they can use not just the tax bill veto, but the general, as I said in my press release, he's behaving like a toddler. Him and all the Democrats are behaving like toddlers. And they making life difficult for people, not only for taxes, but for all those other things that were in the bills that he vetoed out of spite.
But like toddlers, Minnesota loves DFLers anyway.
Oh, sure. Toddlers are cute.
So, but with Mark Dayton not on the ballot, and Democrats want to run on, all politicians want to run on to make your life better, do they turn away from the ways of Mark Dayton? Do they criticize Mark Dayton for not signing the tax bill and risk giving Donald Trump this victory? How do you see Democrats using the tax issue to campaign?
Well, they've already kind of, they've told us what they're going to do. They've said that the tax bill, our tax proposal, catered to special interests, wealthy Minnesotans and businesses. So they're playing a class warfare again, and it's an old song and dance. It's boring, it's dull, it's outdated. It's like listen to Milli Vanilli, right? It's old bad music, and you just get tired of it.
Dare you, sir?
Well, I was a fan of Milli Vanilli back in the day. I don't admit that to many people, but they were a lot of fun, right? And then especially when they were lip syncing, that was even more fun.
At least we've got some footage for our promo. Thank you. Thank you. All right, so people in Minnesota are, for the time being, screwed on taxes. Yeah. Mark Dayton could call a special election, but he likely won't, and this is something that'll have to be fixed by the next legislature, which of course you'll be there, and whomever we elect governor.
Right. Yeah, and there are probably some things next session early we could do statutorily to delay things, to stretch things out, and to make it easier. But we had to look at the process, procedure, if it would help or if it makes things worse. I just received something from one of the expert organizations out here, and I haven't read it, but they said the headline was a special session would be do more harm than good for tax law. So there are probably some things we can do, but there's a conformity. We might have a ton of money that we can maybe
give back to the people.
Do real reform, and do we want to jam that in a short period of time? And I don't know. So a lot of things to work out, priorities, procedurally, politically, but in the end, what's best for the state? And certainly that's not where we're at now.
All right. Well, because of course you are in the state Senate, and the Senate is not up this year, I encourage you with the start of summer here to go out to the cabin and just check out.
We're going to go out there in a couple of weeks. We're going to go up there for about 7 days, and I mean, life is good. This is still the United States of America. We're still pretty good, and we hope to keep it that way, and that's our goal and our aim. So
USA.
Yeah, USA.
Thank you, Senator Roger Chamberlain.
You.
Appreciate you coming in very much. When we return, we'll talk with Republican-endorsed candidate for governor, Jeff Johnson. Welcome back to Minnesota Nights. I'm Jack Tomczak. Joining us now is endorsed Republican candidate for governor, Hennepin County Commissioner Jeff Johnson. Hi, Jeff.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. We had a good weekend in Duluth.
We've talked about earlier in the show the mess that the DFL is in. They've got people running for governor who were running for attorney general moments earlier.
A few days ago, yeah.
But let's focus on the Republican side. Now we have you, Jeff Johnson, endorsed candidate, and former Governor Tim Pawlenty running in the primary. Is that it?
That is, well, no, there is a third set of candidates I don't know. I've never heard of them before, so I don't think they're going to be a factor.
Okay.
So it is
Bold,
really a race.
Bold, I admire your confidence.
Thank
I
you.
admire your confidence.
It's a race between Tim and me.
All right.
Yes.
And you have announced a lieutenant governor candidate. Who is that? Because I don't know who that person is.
It's Donna Bergstrom, and Donna lives up in Duluth. She has a very impressive background. She's a former lieutenant colonel in the Marine Corps Reserve. She was a a battalion commander in Panama. She's a former guardian ad litem, longtime activist in Duluth. And when I announced her, Alliance for a Better Minnesota, whom we both love, tweeted out, it looks like Jeff Johnson's running mate has a much more impressive resume than he does. And
Good.
my response
Smart
was,
choice.
yes, that's why I picked her. So she's amazing.
Cool. From convention until now, what have you been up to? How have things changed now that you have the endorsement? Of course, you've been through this before as the endorsed candidate. But this year, how's that changed for you, and how's that changed the race?
So since the endorsement, it's been fundraising and traveling around the state. I spent much of the day in Mankato today. A lot of media.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it was great, actually. We love the people in Mankato. And was on Almanac tonight.
Okay.
Tim didn't show up. He had something else going on apparently.
Okay.
And that has kind of been the theme: is he doesn't want to be anywhere that I am. And that's a strategy. I get that. It's kind of the Jeb Bush strategy. Let's have all the money and name recognition, and then not talk about any issues and ignore your opponents. I don't think that's what people are looking for, but we'll
didn't
find
work
out.
for Jeb Bush.
It did not work very well.
No, and I don't expect you to campaign for your opponent here, but Tim Pawlenty, of course, he's known, he's been governor for 8 years, a while ago. He shouldn't have any reason not to show up.
Well, I mean, it's a strategy, and I get this, it's politics 101. If you are ahead, and I suspect he's ahead right now, he's got name recognition, then you kind of hunker down. But it's politics 101 from about 20 years ago, and I think everything has changed. I think people are looking for somebody who will answer questions straight out, even if you don't think they're going to like your answer, and not just revert to talking points at every possible turn, and who will go out and engage people, both Republicans and Democrats and everything in between. And so I think I think that is my edge in this primary. Even though I'm going to get outspent, I will outwork him, and I think people will appreciate the fact that I'm just going to address the issues and not rely upon the old strategies.
All right. Now you got to get through the primary before the general, and right now your opponent is Tim Pawlenty. But do you have an eye to the DFL at all? Their endorsed candidate being Aaron Murphy. Lori Swanson is now running for governor as well, and Tim Walz. Do you look at that out of the corner of your eye at all, or
Oh,
do you
absolutely.
try to ignore that?
Yeah, I mean, which one wins, I have no control over that. So I mean, this primary, I'm going to spend most of my time talking about them and the differences between what I would be as governor and what the DFL will. I still have to make the case that I'm a stronger candidate than Tim. But yes, I am constantly focusing on that. And it was interesting. So I was on Almanac tonight. They invited all the candidates. So all three Democrats showed up, and I got to watch them, quote unquote, debate each other for 15 minutes. And they all fell into the same category that I'm seeing from Tim, which is they just wouldn't answer questions. They reverted to their talking points no matter what the question was. So
now, did Lori Swanson revert to her gubernatorial talking points or her attorney general talking points?
I don't know where they
it's been
came
a big
from,
change
but
for
they
her.
were talking points.
Okay.
At one point, Eric Escala, they all talked about how the schools need more money, and he asked what I thought was a fair question. So, do you think any reform should come with more money? And none of them would answer the question. They said it's all about the children. We have to support our teachers, and we need to fully fund our schools. But completely ignoring what the actual question was, and they were all moving as far left as they could.
Maybe
including
they were all
Tim
reading
Walz.
off the same talking point
I think they
sheet,
are.
and that
Yeah,
was just
they're pretty
difficult to
simple
do.
talking points. Yes.
All right. What is your website in case people want to learn more about you or get involved with your campaign?
johnsonforgovernor.org, and you can sign up to volunteer or just get information, but we are a grassroots campaign and I need people. And so if you have any interest, go on there and sign up. We'd love to have anyone.
Thank you so much, Jeff Johnson, candidate for governor, the Republican endorsed candidate. Thank you also, Senator Roger Chamberlain, Jamar Nelson from the DFL, and NASCAR Kelly Gunderson. Next week on Minnesota Nights.
I'm 5'2". Nice, I know. And in addition, I'm short-waisted.